Hello, my name is Dusan. Have you ever wanted to be invisible? You know, exactly, like in a Harry Potter book, you put a cloak of invisibility on and you just disappear. You're not there anymore. I certainly felt like that when I moved to Bratislava in 1999 from Košice. I bought this little flat in Bratislava in the old town, and it was really great. It was a really nice neighborhood, but I felt like somebody who can't be seen. I would meet my neighbors on the staircase or by the mailboxes. We would sort of half-heartedly say hello, but that was it, nothing else. And the only place and time where we could really have a conversation or a dialogue was at the owners' meeting in Slovak that is called Domová schôdza. And I suppose you all know what a nice, lovely, warm and welcoming place that is, right? No, of course I'm kidding, it isn't. Going to the owners' meeting is a bloody nightmare. I suppose you have that experience. And it was like that in our house. I remember we would meet in this corridor. It was dark, it was sort of cold, it was drafty, and we would sort of stand there against each other, leaning against the walls, looking at each other like two fighting families from Romeo and Juliet. It really was not a nice environment. And I really didn't like it, and I wanted to do something about it. I wanted to change that. So I created this community project, which I called Neighbors in the Courtyard. In Slovak, that's Susedia na dvore. I put up flyers around my neighborhood, inviting people to come to the courtyard and spend some time together. I remember this one day, I walked down the stairs, I had a bag full of sangria bottles in one hand and a cake in the other, and I descended down to that courtyard and I waited there, hoping that somebody would show up. And they did. I was very surprised that they did. There was like 25 of us, and it was really great, and I was surprised to find out how hungry people were for contact and how hungry they were to get to know each other. They just didn't really have the opportunity. So that's how our community, Neighbors in the Courtyard, was born. That was 2011. Since then, we did all sorts of activities, all of them with just one purpose: get people together, get them to know each other and to like each other a little bit more than at the owners' meetings. So we did all kinds of activities, like we did concerts, theater, we did open-air cinema, we did book clubs, book readings, gardening events, you name it, we did it. And it was all nice and fine, but somehow something was still missing. It wasn't quite enough. People could see each other better, but we weren't quite there. And I realized that we weren't quite there when I wanted to have this open-air cinema evening at our courtyard. And I wanted to play a film by my friend Robert Šveda. He's actually in the picture. It's this one. He's a Slovak director. And he directed this film called Angels, and it's about gay relationship. And I remember another neighbor approaching me and telling me, "Dusan, are you sure you want to show this film?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, it's sort of, it's like a sensitive topic. It might cause outrage. It might cause a scandal." And I said to this friend, "Why? I mean, it's really it's a very funny film. It's very low key. There's no nudity, nothing outrageous. It's just about two men in love. Like me and my partner." I said to this friend, "We live there in that window. We love each other. What's wrong with that?" And this friend didn't really answer that question, but it left me a little bit nervous. I didn't really know if we were ready for this kind of film to be played in a public space. But we did it anyway, and I'm very happy to say that I'm very happy that I didn't give in to the fears of this friend. We had a very nice evening, outside evening, and it was very powerful for me because after that we talked about the subject. We talked about how it is to be gay, in Slovakia and Bratislava. And I remember Robo, the director, walking among the neighbors, answering their questions, how the movie was made and what it meant to him. So that was really a spectacular evening for me personally. I really felt for the first time that I was seen completely in my community, in my neighborhood. After that, there were two more defining moments for me in that courtyard. First one had something to do with a project for homeless people. There was this house for homeless that was being built very close to our street. It is on Mítna Street. And people did not greet that idea enthusiastically, to say the least. They were very much against it. They were really sort of angry about it and very much afraid. So we tried to do something to change those fears. Do you know this theory called "not in my own backyard"? Does anybody know it? No? I'll explain it. It's actually very straightforward, very simple. It means that we are for projects like that, like projects for socially disadvantaged people, like homeless people or women who face domestic violence or children who face domestic violence. We're fine with it. We support it. We just don't want it to be in our street. We want it to be somewhere else, in a different town, or in New Zealand, or preferably somewhere on Mars. Just not here, somewhere else. And that's exactly what happened. People started to be afraid that the homeless people would harass them, and they were afraid that the property prices will fall down. This is the middle of Bratislava, by the way. So we really wanted to do something with this topic and to change the perception a little bit. So we started to communicate with that center, which was established 5 years ago, and we started to invite clients from that center, homeless people, to help us. For instance, when we had those gardening events. I remember one guy. He was called Milan. He is called Milan, and he was homeless, and he was extremely small, but very sweet and so strong, And every time we needed to plant a tree or lift something heavy, he was there to help us. So he really sort of became a part of the community in a way. I'm very proud to know him. And I remember one of those gardening events that we had, we finished with something special. We wanted to have a meal together, So we actually cooked in that homeless center big soup, goulash soup, with Milan and the other guys from the center, and we had it together. We sort of cleaned the yard, and then we sat around the table and we had a meal. And it made me realize at that moment that when you sit with somebody and you have a meal with them, you immediately see them in a different light. You really see them as a whole. You don't see a homeless person against you. You see a human being with a story and with their own worries and joys. So the homeless center has been in existence for 5 years. It helped hundreds of people in the meantime. Milan personally is off the streets now. He then found work as a waiter, and he's no longer a homeless person, I'm very happy to say. The second defining moment in the courtyard for me was a facility for elderly people. It's actually right there in our courtyard. This courtyard is like really big, and there's a little part of it which is separated by a fence. And there are those elderly people who go there, and they spend like 8 hours every day there. And they have their activities, they drink tea and have fun. And I remember seeing this one lady in particular. She has a very poetic name, I think. She's called Mrs. Poštolková. And she's 92 years old, and she was always there, drinking her tea. And I really wanted to meet her, so I convinced a neighbor of mine that we should go there, that we should try to go behind that fence and spend some time with them. And we did. They were a bit those elderly people were a bit hesitant if they weren't sure what we wanted from them. But then they realized that we just want to spend time with them. And we started to go there regularly. We had our Mondays that we called Neighbors Without a Fence. Not without a defense, but without a fence. And this is what we did, basically. We just sat around the table. I would bring my super heavy coffee machine that I have at home, because those elderly people, they love their cappuccinos and lattes. They don't want just instant coffee, They want like really good coffee. And my friend Masha, who is also in the picture, she's there. She would bake a cake, and we would meet downstairs, and we would grab anybody who was in the courtyard, mostly children and their mothers, And we would go to the elderly people's facility, and we would talk. We would talk about politics, and we would gossip about celebrities. And they would sing for us. They would bring pictures and cutouts from the old papers. We basically exchanged our life stories, and it was very beneficial for us, but also for them. And then one day we came there. That was like 4 months ago, and they were sad. And that was because the city council decided to close this facility for elderly people down. After 22 years, they decided to close it down. And we were really, really mad about it and really angry because the city council decided to do that without any sort of dialogue between the city and the elderly. They didn't ask them. They didn't ask them for their opinion or how they wanted to change the situation. They just said, "Okay, this is going to be over. Be prepared. And in 2 months, you have to go." So, as you can imagine, we really were very frustrated with the situation. And I remember one day us sitting around this table and almost like crying into our coffees. And then Mrs. Postolkova, who I had mentioned before, she said, "Well, this is not all right. We should do something about it. I mean, we should protest against this decision. This is not fine. We should protest. We should make a demonstration." And I was like, "Okay, I think I gave her too much coffee this morning." I was kind of worried about that, but then I realized she's right. We have to do something about it. We can't just sit around. So we organized a big petition. We were hoping to get like 100 signatures. Eventually, we got 1,000. And then we got into 3 cars, neighbors, the elderly people, and also some other friends. And we went to the city council, and we had a little demonstration. So there was like 12 of us, but it was really great. We had those banners, and it was really, really cool stuff. And sadly, we did not manage to save our beloved facility for elderly people, which is in our courtyard. But the sight of those elderly people holding banners and saying to the mayor, who is also in the picture, by the way, this is him, saying to him that, "No, we do not agree. We are not invisible. We are not to be ignored. We have our voice. Please listen to us." That was something very empowering for me, but mostly for them. The story of those protests and of this facility could not just disappear. The energy that was created around it made us believe that we have to continue and we have to do something with it. So we organized this festival, which is taking place tomorrow and the day afterwards. We organized it with those seniors who will be present. Hopefully they will come. And the festival is called Old is Cool, or Old School. You're very welcome to join us. It's tomorrow and the day afterwards in the city center. So I would like to maybe wrap up with 2 thoughts. I believe that we shouldn't hide, that we should be open about who we are and tell the others who we are. And the second thought is we should be curious about the others. We should find out more about them, because nobody is just a homeless person. Nobody is just a senior person who doesn't have a voice. Nobody is just an annoying neighbor. We are all much, much more than that. And I think it's very worthwhile to discover that. So, I guess it's cool to be invisible when you're Harry Potter. But Mrs. Postolkova, who held that banner in the city council, or Milan, who helped us plant the tree in our courtyard, or myself, we prefer to stand right here where you can see us. Thank you.